We are live with Lewis Kasman. Hope everyone's doing good. I see there's a few people watching. Lewis, how you doing, man?
Okay, Jess. Good evening. How are you?
I'm pretty good, man.
That's
Glad to
good.
be here doing this.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
It's a lot going on.
A lot going on.
We missed last weekend. We had some things going on and we just couldn't get together, but we're back. A lot's happened, and I'm glad to be back on here to talk with you. And I know a lot of people are probably going to have some questions and stuff that we'll get to. So I'm glad to be doing this.
Okay,
We got
sounds
a few
good, man.
people. Got a few people coming in. Let's see. 10 Pale TV. Thanks for being here, man. Jim. Big Jim from Scranton. Thanks for being here. Peter Martino. We get a few people coming in. When you come in, be sure, hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button on this video. It helps get it out there. And if you can, help donate to the channel. It helps out. And also it allows us to see the questions a little bit better. But yeah, what's been going on, Lewis? There's a lot going on in the news. I wrote some things down. I wanted to run it by you to get your thoughts on it.
All right, let's
go.
You
know the Gotti family well. You were very close with them. Apparently, John Gotti's grandsons were arrested for assault. Have you heard anything about that?
A few people I spoke to about it. Of course, the media, reported it somewhat differently. But I think this guy owed money or stole things and what have you. And, he was asked to return it. He was warned and so on and so forth. So I think they just had to, take it in their own hands and do what they had to do. So, yeah, so that's what that's what I heard happened. And they were Peter's kids. And
that's what I heard.
It's it's a misdemeanor. And when people say, oh, the Gottis, this, that, listen, everybody grew up in that era. Everybody knows who their grandfather was and who their father was. And the Gotti name is still a name out there. That's John Sr., go down in the books, highly respected man. And so the kids, and like everybody else, including myself, we're proud of that man and proud of that name. Notwithstanding, nobody's perfect. I'm not judging the kids or what happened or what didn't. I'm not looking to do that. But that's still a very, very, very powerful, influential name, especially now with Jeannie being home, and various other unsubstantiated news reports by people in this genre and others, again, unsubstantiated.
Right.
So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about Gene Gotti here in just a minute. But yeah, I just had I saw that article about John Gotti's grandsons, and like you said, that name is a powerful name even today. And but on the other hand, I'm sure it works against the family sometimes, because the newspapers love to put a Gotti name in the headlines, so that.
Well, Jess, if it was John Q. Citizen that beat up a neighbor, it wouldn't have been in the papers.
Right. Yeah, you'd have
never
heard
about it. They probably
about
wouldn't have been arrested because those responding police officers knew that once they filled out those reports and once that went public, that was a big thing for them. They arrested a Gotti grandson.
Yeah.
If it was, like I said, if it was John Q, number one, they probably wouldn't have been arrested, and it wouldn't have made front page news.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the point I was making, that assaults and things like that, disputes happen every day and that we don't hear about. But I think that name is what put it out there like that. So
Exactly.
another thing I wanted to ask you about that I heard and just wanted to get your take on it. But about a week or so ago, there were reports of like 2 or 3 social clubs that were connected to the Bonanno family that were robbed at gunpoint.
Mhm.
Heard anything about this?
Well, again, I heard about it, and like that Bonnie and Clyde group, both those people wound up dead.
Yeah.
I think it's a stupid move to rob any of these social clubs or any of these card games going on that are connected to any organized crime families, because whether it's Colombo, Bonanno, Gambino, they're not going to let that go by, because it's just not going to happen that way. So, like I said, I wouldn't want to be in those people's shoes that robbed that club, and there's definitely going to be retaliation, and I'm sure it's being worked on as we speak.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be some form of retaliation. I'm interested to see, exactly, which we may never hear about it. But I know I saw one channel had spoke about it, and they alleged that it was some Albanian guys, and some Albanian mob or gangsters or whatever. But yeah, I don't know how they would know that, but
I don't know either. And they always blame the Albanians, but I'm sure it'll be discovered,
yeah.
and it will be taken care of promptly and swiftly, because that's not going to go unchecked.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to get your take on that. I had heard some people talking about that, and I know a few years back I had heard some stuff that families were discouraged about having social clubs and that sort of thing because of the attention that it draws. So hearing this, I guess they have went back on that, and there's still clubs and hangouts and that sort of thing in that area.
Mm-hmm. Well, back then there were a lot more social clubs, and it was a different day. For example, no one was going to rob a social club when John Gotti was playing cards in there, and it's just it's mind-boggling. It just never would have went on. Today these things go on, but they're remedied, and they're taken care of promptly. Yeah. So desperate people, desperate times, and this is what happens.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned Gene Gotti a few minutes ago. He was released from prison a few years ago, and there was speculation, was he going to become active on the street? Was he going to retire, or however you want to put it? But there's been some recent speculation that Gene Gotti is the current boss of the Gambino family. You knew Gene Gotti very well. What do you think about that?
Well, I go back with Gene further than I really go back with John. And, Gene Gotti is the real deal. He's a tough guy. He's a gangster. Very much like his brother in terms of honor. As you know, look at all the time he did in jail. And, and let's face it, for the short time that John was on the street as the boss, and for the time that he was locked up and remained the boss, he brought a lot of, positive and a lot of glamour and a lot of strength to the Gambino family as the boss, contrary to what people will say, he was to this, he was to that. That's all bullshit. Everybody loved it. People in the club loved it. That was what it was. That was the era of those times. And I would like to see, if it's factual, I don't know, you have other people in this genre that report these things. And believe me when I tell you, they're unsubstantiated. Without mentioning anybody's name, they are unsubstantiated. So I would venture to say, if Gene wants it, I believe Gene could have it. If Nicky wants it, Nicky could have it. Big Louie, he goes back to the days of that mutt Gravano. So, but Big Louie was loyal to John Gotti Sr. And, and there were no bones about that, because he was tested and tried by John. So, I would say if Jeannie wanted it, Jeannie could have it. No one's going to challenge him, and no one should challenge him, because his brother died for this cause and died, a terrible death. Unlike many other bosses, and I'm not speaking ill of them, but John died the worst way you could die. No medical care. That's a show that we had already, but everybody knows how John Gotti died, and so I would venture to say, again, factually speaking, I do not know. But if you ask me my opinion is if Gene wanted it, Gene could have it. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like we spoke about a minute ago, just that name, his last name could work against him, but and like you said, it could work for him because of who he is. But I think it's interesting that several guys that were very close with John and very loyal to John have risen to, a very high position, from what I hear and what I understand. It's like the same guys have, are still there after all this time.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Jesse, because if you just look around, you look at JoJo before he passed away, he was the consigliere, very close to John. You look at Gene, of course, that's his brother. You'll look at Nicky, another John Gotti guy. So yes, all the Johnny Koenig is out, another John Gotti guy.
Yeah.
All that Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, they're all, coming out. They're alive. A lot of them are well, and they're all going to make moves. And and as far as Genie's concerned, if he wants it, he should get it. I mean, he did the time, and it's his chance now to shine. But see, Genie, he'll do it on the low key. Genie's a different type than John. And so that's the way. We'll see. We'll see what happens once reality clicks in, and once we have, the real story behind this whole thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll just we'll stay tuned and see what happens. We'll see if any information comes out. I'm sure he's got to be careful, with law enforcement surveillance and that sort of thing. So I'm sure we'll be.
Keep in mind, Jess, when John was out, the Gambino squad had over 200 agents. Okay. And they were borrowing agents from other squads. That squad has been decimated. The Gambino squad, they're down to maybe 5 agents. From what I'm led to believe by people in the news media, because I have no communication with the FBI at all. So yeah, I would say that it would be Genie could get a long run, because the FBI is all focusing on all the
terrorism,
terrorism and people coming in from other countries, like what's going on in Los Angeles today. So it's a different time. It's a different day. It's a different time. And this president is not so focused on the mafia, because let's face it, he was in construction, and he knows how the system works. And the FBI, under the leadership of a new leader, this Kash Patel, it's a different day. The Bruce Maus and the Gabriels, those FBI guys of that era, they're gone. They're retired. A lot of them are dead. And so Gene can have a real long run, if he plays it right.
Yeah, I think so too. I see several comments here in the chat. I'm just going to go down through here and welcome some people into the show.
Go ahead.
I see we've got about 100 people. Let's see. Tin Pail, I mentioned you. What's up, man? Thanks for being here. Jim, thanks for being here, man.
JJ's here, my good friend JJ.
I saw that.
Peter Martino. If I ever met Tony Pizza, I met him.
Pete.
Vegas Pizza. Vegas Pizza. Good. Hey, Vegas Pete. What's up, man?
JJ, what's up, man?
Here's one. My thoughts on Frankie Dapp. Yeah, John really liked Frankie Dapp. Frankie Dapp was a good guy. Yep. John really liked him a lot. Good guy.
Tommy Stiggs. What's going on, Tommy? Thank you for being here, man. Belleville. Let's see.
Jeff Nadeau's in the house. Okay. I wonder if Jeff Nadeau's in this house or his house.
I don't know. Drew.
I don't think he knows.
Greetings from Miami.
Did I know Tony Roach? I did know Tony Roach, Vegas Pete. Oh, here's one, Jesse. Mr. Maxwell. Nadeau had the scoop on the Gotti brats. Nadeau did not have the scoop on the Gotti brats. Let's get one thing straight so everybody knows this. Nadeau has the scoop on nothing. Nadeau reads the newspapers and he does this. I don't look at him, but from what I hear, he does this breaking news. Everything is breaking news with Nadeau. He has the scoop on nothing. He follows and copies what the media is happening, and he reports it as breaking news. But Max Cat, he did not have the scoop on the Gotti kids.
Here's a good question here, Lewis. Let me see if I can find it. Everyone, make sure you hit that like button. It helps out the channel. Donate to the channel if you can. It helps out. And also we'll be able to see the question or whatever you're writing better. Here it is. Hey, Lewis, if John could get a do-over picking his underboss and consigliere, who do you think he would choose?
I think he would have had Tommy Gambino in there as either underboss or consigliere. And I think that for his underboss, he might have had maybe Frankie Dapp as an acting underboss, or maybe, oh God, there were so many good guys around then. I wouldn't, not Danny Marino, because there was some bad blood there. I don't know, maybe Jimmy Brown, or Joe Butch, I think, for a while, but then he got sick. There was a lot of good guys around, but I would say Tommy Gambino would definitely 100% would have been in the mix, because that was his plan when he was getting rid of Gravano.
Gotcha. Rocco says the latest report is that neither club was robbed. Ruggiano just went live from Ozone Park.
That's possible. I don't know this fella Ruggiano that well.
I don't know one way or the other.
No.
I don't know. I mean, there was some other channels, some stuff that was written, about this. So Mike DeLuca finally caught the live. Glad to have you, man. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, and New York.
Gianni Catalano. Good evening, American Made. I'm glad you're here, man.
New York fan is here. He's letting us know he's watching. I appreciate that, New York fan.
Rocco wants to know, Lewis, what do you think of Dom Shikali?
What do I think of Dominic Shikali? Not too much. No, I didn't think much of him when he was on the street, and neither did John. And I don't think much of him now.
Robert says, fellas, great show. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Gianni says, anyone making mob hierarchy charts based on Nadeau or Bernstein reporting should get a new hobby.
100%. Nadeau and Bernstein are in the same league.
Do you want to address this one, Lewis?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rocco. Thank you for that. And what tapes are you referring to? I listened to all the tapes. Stop making up stories, Rocco. Here's one. If Paul goes to jail and he needs Tommy Bilotti as acting boss, you think John would still make the move? 100%, Keith. John was taking that job no matter what. 100%. Uncle B says Frankie Dapp didn't want it. It's not a question of if Frankie wanted it or didn't want it. If he was offered the position and was going to take that position and John gave it to him, Frankie would take it with open arms.
Big shot. Thanks for being here, man. Oh, you just answered that one, I think.
Here's a good one. Ryan P. So Gene Gotti's the boss of the Gambinos, and Lorenzo Manano runs the Sicilian faction. Yeah, that's logical. That's logical. It's like when Joe Gambino was out. You know, that whole Sicilian faction when John was out. You know, and there was always that separate situation. So that's nothing unusual, and that would work out fine. Good. That's a very intelligent question, Ryan.
Vincent said, can you describe a John Gotti 4th of July party?
Sure. Unlimited food, unlimited beverages. John Jr. was in charge of the fireworks, and John Jr. would have it all set up on the train tracks on 101st, all over. And, you know, David Dinkins was the mayor at one point when we were doing it. And he told the cops to look the other way. And in fact, John had election signs up in the club to vote for David Dinkins. So, yeah, it was a great party. Hundreds and hundreds of people used to come from all over. Kids were coming from Long Island, from Westchester, all over. I mean, legitimate people, not just, you know, wise guys. And, of course, all the captains were there. And, you know, you had the 2 red doors. You had the left red door, which was for, you know, all associates and people, made guys. And then you had the right door, which was John's private side of the club, which Fat Bob was in charge of, and that's where he would be, and all the captains would be, and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a great day, and everybody loved it. I miss it.
I think they were referring to Big Louie, that was a coffee boy.
No, Big Louie was never a coffee boy.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, you could be right. He could be right, but Big Louie was never a coffee boy.
Big Shot says, where can we listen to all the tapes?
File a freedom of information with the FBI or the Eastern District of New York. It should take about 2 years for them to comply.
Big Luke's in the house. What's up, man? Lewis, did you know those 2 screwballs from Huntington Townhouse?
There are a lot of screwballs from the Huntington Townhouse. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Rocco says he was talking about Louis Valerio. Yeah, but he was never a coffee boy. Rocco.
Let's see what we got here. Butler Properties. Lewis, when Junior was acting boss, how did people in the family feel about it? And was Junior similar to how John Sr. ran things?
Okay, the first part of your question, I think a lot of the old timers maybe resented it. Maybe they felt it was time to move on at that point. but they had so much respect for John Sr. that they would never express that publicly or to other captains. And they just wanted to let it play itself out until, John Sr. Passed away. So there was resentment. There was jealousy, yes. Was Junior similar to how John Sr. had things? No, absolutely not. John Sr. was a bit more low-key, not as aggressive. He didn't have that same temper that John Sr. had. So there was, great differences. But I have to say, Junior, there was never a body on the street. Nobody got killed under Junior's reign. I have to say that. And in defense of him, he did the best that he could do under the circumstances. He was being sought after by the FBI. He had to please his father. He had to take care of his family. He had to take care of his mother. He had to take care of Peter. And we can't forget my sweet sister Angel and Vicki. So, in all fairness, put whatever on the side now for a second. Junior had a very, very tough job, plus going on visits to see his father, and trying to talk to his father. And you couldn't talk because it was through the glass. So I have to say, and that's where Mikey Scars came in. That's why this whole thing with Scars was such a terrible thing, because Mikey Scars was a tremendous, tremendous asset to John Jr. And they were very good friends. They were best of friends. So there was no comparison between the two.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be some difficult shoes to step into, especially at that time.
Yeah, definitely.
William Brooklyn says, was the Tommy Stiggs Social Club robbed? I highly doubt it. They would be in Tommy's trunk. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Mr. Max Cat 32 says, can you speak of anybody from the Patriarcha mob? Was Richard Redbird Gomes or Games John's driver?
Well, he wasn't John Jr.'s driver, and he wasn't John Sr.'s driver. So I guess you're right. It's just Nadu here looking for a scoop, making up shit.
Lewis, you ever eat at Denny's? I sang there in the 90s.
I don't recall. I don't think I did. You could come on if you want to sing now, Pete. But maybe, you could refresh me, but I don't recall that.
Big Luke says, who was the person who named the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club?
I would say, I'm just guessing. I would say it either had to be Angelo Quack or John, or maybe the Fatico brothers, either Carmine Fatico or Danny Fatico. But I really can't speak to that with any truthfulness.
Tommy says, what was John Gotti Sr.'s favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Yeah, I think there's some video out there of Christmas, and I think John Gotti had a Santa Claus and all that sort of thing. EF says, Gotti Sr. was the boss of all bosses. His downfall was his temper and not being able to hold his tongue while on the phone.
If you're referring to that phone call that he made to Tony Muscatel, that was John's way. When Tony didn't call him back within 2 hours, for whatever reason, because Tony was, close to John. So, when he finally picked up the phone, and Tony was very respectful, so it's just maybe he didn't get the message or whatever happened. So that was John's frustration. I'll blow up your fucking house. And of course that never occurred, and it never was going to occur. That, John had a temper, and he's the kind of guy who'd scream and holler at you, and an hour later, hey, come on, let's go for Chinese food. Come on, let's go for dinner. That's the way he was. And everybody that was close to him and loved him knew that. Although Tony Muscatel must have shit himself, but nothing was going to happen over that. So, and you know what? It's it's like the old story. And when John Jr. and I would go on the visits, and I would say to his father, I'll sever your motherfucking head. That was John's way. If he was mad, he used to holler, I'll sever your motherfucking head off. If he severed every head that he was going to sever, there would be no heads left. That was his way. And those of us who knew him, we loved him, and we understood that about him. So, I'm sure Junior and everybody who's watching is laughing now because it's the truth. He's killing this guy, killing that guy. I'll blow your house up. One day he called the office, my office. And for whatever reason, the phone wasn't picked up. Normally the phone was picked up on the first or second ring because it was right on my desk. So for whatever reason, maybe I was downstairs or in the men's room, whatever. So he called on the main line, and he told the girl that the switchboard operator, he says, you tell Lewis, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna blow that office up. So the girl came to me. She was all upset. She says, Lewis, Mr. John called, and he's gonna blow the office up. Should we leave? I said, listen, he's not blowing the office up. I says, that's just his way. He just says that because he really loves you. He's gonna blow the office up. Whatever. He never blew the office up. That was just his way. That was his way of venting.
Did he ever threaten to sever your head off?
No, he never threatened to sever my head. And it was to sever your head off. It had to be your motherfucking head.
Right. Ball is Life asks, why was John Jr. acting boss instead of Mikey Scars? I understand he was the son, but Scars had the wherewithal to run it efficiently.
I think at that point, Senior wanted to give it to his son, and it was given to him with the understanding that Scars was by his side. And, and I have to say, factually speaking, when Scars flipped, that was, that really broke John's heart and a lot of people's hearts. I guess the same situation with me. But Scars, Scars was put in an untenable situation. And that was promoted and provoked by Uncle Pete, Peter Gotti.
J.R. Luna says he did time with Lewis in Lewisburg camp.
That's true. If that's you, you did. In fact, if that's you, Luna, your brother Hector called me. Get in touch with him. He's looking to talk to you.
Yeah, I've seen him comment on a couple of videos, so I'm pretty sure he said that he knew you a couple comments. Big Luke says, when you went on holidays with John, did he ever wear shorts, or was that a big no-no?
Well, obviously, if we were at the pool, he was in shorts, although he never went in the water. But most of the time, he was in long pants. If we were at a Gurney's, once in a while, he'd have a longer pair of shorts on, but he'd have the black socks up to his knees. But
he would always wear the knee highs.
Yeah, but he wasn't a guy in shorts.
Yeah, because if you watch The Sopranos, a Don never wears shorts.
Yeah, no, he wasn't a short guy. Norman's job at the club in the Ravenite, he ran the club, Peter. He was in charge of that club. That's why he's on a lot of FBI videos. And yes, he's still alive, and he's doing a life sentence. And I have not seen him, no.
Anthony asked, Lewis, what do you think about Big Mark telling stories on YouTube about John Gotti at the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club?
I've only listened to one of his stories. I think they're kind of amusing, but I think if Gene Gotti is indeed the boss, or to be the boss, I think that Big Mark will probably stop telling the stories about the Bergen hunt. I think my sister Angel will go dark on her YouTube show because I don't think that Jeannie, is going to want any of this or going to put up with any of this. So I think if this does come to pass, I think it's going to be a different day. That's just my opinion.
Mike DeLuca says, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, man. Thanks for being here. Lewis, you said Sammy was definitely going. Any details you can tell us? I guess what I'm asking is this. Was this loosely talked about? How long did this indictment save Sammy's life? Did the indictment save his life? And was this ever loosely talked about?
Okay. It was not loosely talked about. It was something his son knew. I knew. Tommy Gambino knew. And maybe, again, whoever else John would discuss this, secret type of a thing with. He didn't get into too much details with me. But this was lingering. This didn't just happen overnight with John and that puke Gravano. This was going on for quite a long time. So when the decision was finally made, again, that indictment saved his life. Yes, it did, because if they don't get indicted, Sammy's gone. And I'm not saying that the indictment would not have came, but if it would have came, there wouldn't have been a Gravano. And remember, Gravano testified against probably 60 or 70 people. And he says, Gravano's way of justifying him becoming a rat and a confidential informant before he became a rat is that he, on the tapes, John was talking bad about him. You got to look at the Gambino family this way. When you're the CEO of a company, you go to your vice president. Let's look at it that way. John's the CEO. Frankie's the vice president. He's going to Frankie. He says, listen, I got a problem with this guy. I'm not happy with this guy. John was not aware that apartment was wired, obviously. And he was talking to Frankie, and he was talking to Frankie in the third party because he was trying to tell Frankie, why aren't you taking action in this? Why aren't you remedying this situation that I have to be involved with Gravano? And if you listen to Gravano, he did everything for John. He killed this guy. He killed 100 people, according to Gravano. That's all lies. That's all bullshit. But that's Gravano's way of justifying. How does he justify the 59 other people he testified against? He admits to 19 murders. I believe there was 20 or 30 more murders. Why doesn't he talk about those people? The guy is a sociopath. That's all I could say about him. He goes to John to kill me and kill Tommy Gambino. Why? Because Tommy warned John about him. I told him about him. When Jerry Shargell went to fill John in, John knew before, but I made Jerry go in there to give John all the information about it. The first words out of his mouth, that Tommy and that Lewis warned me about him. But John knew. See, John was very smart about people. John was a very good reader in people. He had a feeling all along about Sammy. But, it's not that easy. It's not you wake up one morning, you got a whole family. You got hundreds of people here. So hindsight's always 20/20, as they say. So what saved Gravano was the indictment. And, of course, he had, when he got sentenced, he had his good friend there, Judge Leo Glasser. But Glasser knew at the end that there was more than 19 murders. And anybody that's listening to this show who has any knowledge of organized crime and the Gambino family knows there were way more than 19 murders that he admitted to. He killed his own brother-in-law, and then buried him in his family backyard. Does it get any better than that? So.
And didn't the family dog or something find him?
Yeah, the family dog was digging in the backyard and dug up one of his arms. Oh, here's one. Scars as much of a snake as Sammy. No, my friend. Scars is not as much of a friend, as much of a snake as Sammy. There's nothing lower than Sammy. You got to understand that. Nothing lower. Even when he was on the street, he was a lowlife, robbing people, beating people up. The lowest form of life you could meet. Scars was not like that. Scars' loyalty was to John Gotti Sr. and John Gotti Jr. Scars is not a snake, and Scars is not a lowlife. They put him into a corner. Peter Gotti did this to Scars. Scars would have never did what he did. Never. You can't talk about Scars and Gravano in the same breath.
Yeah, I think you can just tell from how they talk about their time in that life and how they put it. You know, you can tell there's a difference between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sammy is the hero in every story. You know,
right? He's the hero. He has reasons for this and reasons for that, but
Puppet Master says these are getting better every time.
And as we go by, they'll get better and better. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Because Lewis is starting to really open up, and it's fascinating. I agree. It's very fascinating. And Lewis is, I've said this before, you know, we've spoke off of here, and there's a lot of things you can't really talk about, but there's just so much information regarding John Gotti that it's never really been spoken about before. And we'll get into it.
Puppet Master says here, Jess, it was Fatico. Yeah, it was Carmine Fatico. And remember, Danny Fatico, he worked for me in the garment center. So, you know, the other brother was gone at that point, but I was very close to Danny Fatico, who was very close to John. Danny was a good guy.
Did you ever see Charlie Wagons around John?
That was before my time.
Let me scroll down a little bit. Go ahead.
Top G, Mikey Scars lies. No, Mikey Scars is not lying. Scars sometimes put a little spin on it because he will never, if you listen to every one of his shows, he will never attack John Sr. Never, ever. So he's not lying. It's just that he had so much love for John Sr. that he will never attack him. So he made what we call, he soft pedals it a little bit.
Detroit Siggy says, is this live? We are live with Lewis Kasman. Be sure to hit that like button on this video. It really helps get it out there. Subscribe to the channel.
Here's one from Tin Pail. Yeah, that's true, Tin Pail, with Redbird and Senior. Yeah. I guess you've been Googling and reading. Keep up the good work, Tin Pail.
Casparosa says, what was it like after it came out that the making lists and the wedding money lists were found along with guns and approximately $350,000 in the basement of Junior's building? How did John Sr. react?
Okay, first part of the question is they did find guns, and they did find $350,000 to $400,000 in the basement. And that's when Junior wanted me to go into the grand jury and say that was his wedding money, which I declined to do because we collected a lot more than that at the wedding. And Senior did find out about it, and Senior was if he could have severed somebody's motherfucking head off, it would have been then. He was beside himself. And that wasn't a good visit for Junior to go on, I'll tell you that. That was the visit where John was reading one of the indictments, and he says to Junior, "Where do these people come from?" He says, "I'm in this life for 100 years. Who is this Louis the Leprechaun and Peter jump over the fence and Louis the Frog and Harry the Hamster? Who are these people?" He said to his son. "I never met these people. Where do these creatures come from?" That was not one of John's Junior's better visits.
Yeah, I remember that video. Top G says, "Lewis, what do you think of John Jr.'s 302s? Would you call him a rat?"
Well, let me say this. I think the 302s are the 302s. We can't deny that there were 302s. I think if you control your lawyers, you're not going to get good representation. And at that time, Jeff Lichtman was his lawyer. And we get to Jeff Lichtman through Jerry Shargell. Jerry Shargell employed Jeff Lichtman as a law clerk. Very competent. Jeff Lichtman's brilliant guy, smart. And Jeff Lichtman, like everybody else, got caught up in this whole Gambino, John Gotti thing. And I don't believe, if would John Sr. have ever done this? No. If Charlie Canisi and Jeff Lichtman, if there was if Mike Coiro was his lawyer, Mike would have never let him do this. So John, you can't control your lawyers. You have to take their advice. Now, he was following his father, where his father, Senior, did control the lawyers. So that worked against him. Do I think Junior ratted? No. He didn't rat. He didn't testify. He made a move that was a terrible move. And again, the 302s speak for themselves. Was he trying to manipulate the government or trying to find out what was going on? Hey, listen, he went through 5, 6, 7 trials. Besides that, and he has kids, 5, 6 kids, and the financial burden on him, but he had no burden. So let's not take a collection for John Jr. John Sr. left him in good shape, and John Jr. don't spend a lot of money. He's very cheap, John Jr. So not unlike his father, who spent money constantly. So I don't know really what possessed him to do that. If I was in the loop and I didn't have my shit going on, I would have never let him do that. Never, ever, ever. But, I was out of the picture at that point in time, and Lichtman was his counsel at that time, and Mark Furnish. And Mark Furnish is a government guy. So if Mark Furnish wasn't a government guy, it would have never taken place. But Lichtman should have never let that happen. But it happened. And I'm sure Junior has his biggest regret in life is that he did that. But again, there was no testimony given. He was never subpoenaed. So, you could look at it any other way. What can I say? And no, I'm not backpedaling. He did give 302s. He did talk about Angelo Quack. He did talk about people. However, he never testified. It was a mistake. And you know what? With the right proper guidance and the right situation, it never would have taken place. Unfortunately, it did.
Yeah. Top G makes a good point. Every boss was caught in wiretaps, not just Gotti.
You're 100% right. And a good underboss, remember, a boss doesn't have the same conversation in the same place twice. Never. Never, ever, ever. But when you have the wrong people in these top places, that's the problem. That's the problem. How come when I had the suite in the Helmsley Palace, there was no electronic surveillance? There was nothing. Zero.
The Truth asks, Lewis, who was the most shameless ring kisser you ever saw? I'm sure there was plenty around John at that time.
There were, yeah. If there were 100 people around, 100 people were kissing that ring.
Right.
You believe me? You believe me? So people walked with 2 feet and 1 shoe around John Gotti Sr. How many people we got going, Jesse?
183.
Okay. Here's one. Hey, Jew boy. Yeah, that brings back memories, Faye. Thank you.
Did you ever go to Cafe Liberty to see Tony Lee and Fat Andy? If so, how were they around John?
John and Tony Lee were good friends. Fat Andy was, I never got involved with that. And no, I never went to that cafe.
Puppet Master 999. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Did you know Andy Campos, and who do you think has the potential to be Gambino boss one day?
I didn't know Campos, but I think the potential could be either a Nicky Carrazzo or definitely a Gene Gotti. And I could see Johnny Koenig, I don't know, maybe as a captain. But who knows? You know, who knows? And remember, to be a boss today, you know, it's a life sentence. But you know what the mafia has in their favor is they don't have so many agents dedicated to prosecuting mobsters. You know, it's all terrorism and immigration right now. So the mafia really has a chance to get strong again.
Keith wants to know, Lewis, did you know my uncles, Jackie and Butch Cunningham?
No.
Tin Pail wants to know, Lewis, you claimed you didn't steal any of John's money, yet also stated in a previous live show that the final decision was made by you. How do you explain that?
There's nothing to explain. I had complete trust. John and I had complete trust between each other. He knew everything I was doing. He knew everything going on. And John Jr. knows that. And the whole family knows that. What does it tell you when he told his whole family, when I die, Lewis is going to take care of everything. Lewis will take care of me. So that speaks volumes. That negates anything you can say, Tin Pail, Tin Pig, Tin Pail, whatever you are. That negates everything. There's no greater honor than a man saying to you, take care of my funeral and deliver the eulogy.
Yeah, and you've said this before, you know, I don't think you had a need to, you know, this is just me, but I don't think you had a need to steal from John. I mean, I think you were pretty, you know, you were doing pretty well at that time.
Yeah. There was no need to do. There was no. It never even went through my mind. It was never an option. It was never a need. There was no reason. People want to say that they're jealous. These are all these haters, all these jealous people. You know, that's fine. That's okay.
Do you think John would have ever gotten out of jail if Sammy never ratted on him?
I don't know. I really don't know. I want to hope so, but I don't know. It's like, you know, it's like asking me, would you ever see an American Pope? And now we have an American Pope. So I don't know, but I do know it would have been. But see, John knew, and everybody told John, Gravano can't do time. So John knew this. Everybody knew this. Like I've told your listeners, John knew Gravano was a mutt. This didn't happen after Gravano flipped. This was going on a year before Gravano flipped.
John says, did Senior buy Vicki that house in Old Westbury?
Absolutely not. That house was built and owned by Vicki and Carmine Agnello. John had nothing to do with that house. John never lived in that house. And that house was totally Vicki's. Nothing to do with her father. Although when her and Carmine were going through the divorce, Vicki needed help. And John made sure that Vicki got that kind of help she needed. Both John Sr. and John Jr. Here, Rocco says Scars was withholding money from the family. That's why he needed to be shelved. Rocco, I don't know where you get your information from, but let's assume you're right. Let's assume you're right. John Jr. knew how much money was coming in from what Scars was handling. So John Jr. had to allow him to do that. I don't believe Scars did anything untoward or improper. That's just my opinion. Scars was a big asset to Junior. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Show me the money. You know that expression, show me the money?
Lewis, we got over 200 people in here.
Good. They want to. So yeah, Giovanni Catalano, Sigmund the Sea Monster. You're 100% right. That was another one of the things John said to his son. Who was this Sigmund the Sea Monster? Exactly right. That's good, Pete and Gianni. Brings back old time. When John got off that visit, we're still laughing from that.
Lewis, what was the strategy of Junior relocating to Oyster Bay in the 90s?
Okay, well, first Junior had a house in Mill Neck. He didn't like it. It was on the main street. Then he sold that house, and then he moved to a house in Oyster Bay. And he wanted to raise his family. It's a big house, big, beautiful house. You got to understand, this house is 2-3 acres of land, gated, swimming pool, beautiful house. And John wanted to be out of Howard Beach. He didn't want to raise his kids in Howard Beach. And he wanted to be separate from that. And that was one of the best moves he ever made. Beautiful home. And so that's and John Jr. has a thing for Indian chiefs. So when I would go to the house, you go to the house. In this corner, you see Sitting Bull. In this corner, you see another Indian chief. John had this obsession with Indian chiefs. So it was kind of, I guess maybe Sigmund the Sea Monster gave him that idea.
Yeah, I remember that on the 60 Minutes, I think it was, where he was showing his statues and stuff. Different Indians.
He believed in all that.
Robert says, did Junior sanction the hit on Curtis Sliwa?
100%.
We Talk First podcast says Angel went dark long ago.
Yeah, there's something going on there. Maybe Uncle Jeannie gave her a spanking, but there's definitely something going on there.
Carmine Agnello is operating in Cleveland. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's what I hear. Carmine's back in the day. Carmine was a huge earner, big earner, and I guess he started his new life out there with a new wife, and good luck to him. I never had nothing with him.
Top G says, did you and Angel get along when you were kids?
100%. Me and Angel were very, very close.
Handguns, do you think Gene Gotti is the new boss? And if so, what do you think about it? Go back to the beginning of the video, man. We got into that.
No.
but
I don't, if
I
he
don't know.
is,
It's too early to tell.
yeah, exactly.
John didn't tell you he was going to whack Sammy.
Come on, Ian, man. I went into that with you. I told you what he was going to do if the indictment doesn't come down. Pay attention.
Butler Properties says, "Hey Lewis, what did Tommy Gambino think of Sammy Gravano?"
Hated him. Thought he was a scumbag. I didn't meet one captain that had anything good to say about Gravano, whether it be in the Gambino family, any family, the Cosa Nostra. I'm being funny now. The Cosa Nostra. I never met anybody that had a good word to say about Gravano, including his own guys, including Big Louie. Nobody had a good word to say about him. Let me tell you a quick story about the kind of guy John Sr. was. When he was on trial, now Frankie LaCasio had a ton of money. So one day I'm on the visit, and there was hundreds of tapes. And back in those days, it wasn't on floppy disks. It was on cassettes. And John says to me, and we were getting bills for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to dissect the tapes. The government would give us the transcripts, and then we'd have to order the tapes and have to pay for the tapes. And I don't know how it came about, but John says to me, he says, pay for all the tapes. I don't want Frankie Lowe to pay for the tapes, and give Frankie Lowe's lawyer $50,000. So that's the kind of guy John was. Here, and remember, John was not a rich boss. He was a wealthy boss, but he wasn't a rich boss like a Castellano. Now, Frankie Lowe was rich. Here you have a guy he'd go to jail, he could get life, and he wants to pay for all the tapes. And remember, all of them were in the tapes. Everybody should have kicked in. And then he wanted to give Frankie Lowe's lawyer some money. That's the kind of guy John was, Yeah.
Let's find another question here.
Oh, here's one. Mike DeLuca. You see that one?
What's the time on it?
8:05.
Let's see.
Yeah, put that one up there, Jesse.
Mike DeLuca, Lewis, how far apart are you and Junior on being cordial amongst one another? What was the relationship like between you two back in those days prior to the big indictment?
Well, Mike, obviously now we don't have any relationship, but my relationship back in the days, I knew what it was. I did everything I could for him with his father and with him in general, with the wedding, with his kids, whatever I could do for him, I did for him. And it was never enough. No matter what I did for him was never enough. He needed a check. He wanted to buy this piece of property. And you're going to be my partner. It never came to pass. It never came to pass. But whatever I could do for him, in my opinion, I was the best friend he ever could have had. But with Junior, everything was always about money, and what he could get. He was always an edger, always looking to get more and do more and get more. But, that's how it was back then, unfortunately. But, yeah.
Steve Wilson says, shout out to American Made from Cleveland, Ohio. Steve, thanks for being here, man. And everyone, hit that like button. It helps out the video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another one. And donate to the channel if you can. It helps out.
Hey, John Arena at 8:05 p.m. I answered that question already. Angel is his daughter. Angel is John's daughter. So go to sleep, John Arena.
See what we got here. Butler Properties. Hey, Lewis, with how close you were with John Sr., did you ever feel that John Jr. was envious of your relationship?
He was envious of it, but he used me various times with his father. So he played it both ways. Yeah, he was jealous of the relationship or envious of it. But when he needed me to talk to his father or to explain things to his father, then he was my best friend. So yeah, John Jr. played it both ways with me, and I knew that, and I accepted it for what it was. It was fine. You know, I knew the position I was in with John Sr. I was never insecure about it for 1 second. And you know, Jesse, it's funny. While John was on the street, John Sr., he had this up and down relationship with his dad. But when John Sr. became incarcerated, he had a better relationship with his father. They became closer through the incarceration. Notwithstanding when he went to see his father to tell his father to put him on the shelf, he doesn't want to do it anymore. You know, he wants to become a mailman. You know, that whole bullshit story when he went to the medical center, you know, notwithstanding that story. But they believe it or not, they got closer through the incarceration.
Yeah, I've heard Junior say that in an interview, that it was during that time his father was incarcerated that they really became close and was able to talk.
Yep.
I've heard him say that.
Yeah. It's 100% true.
Lewis, happy Sunday. Did Mr. Gotti have any spiritual beliefs?
None that I know of.
Did, you know, I know you've mentioned before that he wasn't a real religious person. You know, he didn't go to church or anything like that. Did he ever give any type of indication that he had any type of belief, or like whether he practiced it or not? Did he, you know, like...
No, as a matter of fact, you know, that story that went around that no priest would bury him, that's not true. That's not true, because when St. Helens and Howard Beach needed money, I went with the little lunch bag. 20,000, 15,000, 30,000. He didn't believe in it, but when they needed help, John was there. And I did have a priest at the funeral, and I did have a priest at the cemetery. So let that clear up a few different things. He was buried with the utmost of dignity and respect.
Did John like Jerry Capisci, the Gangland news reporter who wrote books and articles on him?
John despised Jerry Capisci. He didn't dislike him. He despised him. Jerry Capisci got better with age. When Jerry was writing for the Daily News, Jerry Capisci was a real scumbag. But as he got more mature and as he did his own little website thing, Gangland News and stuff like that, and he got older, Jerry Capisci, like a bottle of wine, Capisci seasoned with age. And he's the most accurate, in my opinion, the most accurate regarding organized crime in his reporting.
Did you ever have any idea, Lewis, how John or John Jr. hid so much cash? When John Gotti got arrested, he had like $10,000 on him. Tommy Gambino had the most at $14,000.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got to understand, when Tommy Gambino got arrested on a state case, there was almost 400 million in bearer bonds in his safe in the garment center. You get that number? 400 million. Now, that's just what they found. How about what was buried? So, like I said many times, Tommy Gambino, in my opinion, was a billionaire in the league of a Bloomberg. That's the kind of wealth he had. John was not a billionaire. John was a multi-millionaire, but not a billionaire. And another thing, when John would go out, all the guys around him were looking to pick up tabs and this and that. John would never let them. He would blow his top if someone picked up a tab without his permission. John didn't need anybody to pay for his drinks or pay for anything. John was not like that, unlike other bosses. John was the biggest sport you could ever meet as far as any stuff like that.
Rocco says, when it comes to the Curtis Sliwa hit, Scar said that Sliwa was just supposed to get a beating. He would be dead right now if there was a hit put on him.
I guess you know better than me, Rocco.
Did John ever go to the Aqueduct racetrack? It's closing soon. He would be sad to see it go.
Yeah, he did go to Aqueduct, and then he had to stop going because he was banned. They banned him from the track.
Trying to find another good question here. Lewis, we've got 218 people in here.
I hope everybody's enjoying themselves.
Let me know if you see any.
Here's one, Mike DeLuca. What do you think of the relationship is like now between Gene Gotti and Jr.? It's only my opinion. I don't know factually. I don't think there is any relationship.
Robert says, Vicky's house is still there, I think abandoned. And people do YouTube videos going through it. They left all kinds of clothes and all kinds of stuff in that house. I saw a video that a guy had went to that house and was like going through the house, and the guy's, he's right. There was clothes and furniture and stuff still in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That house is now owned by, I believe, Chase Manhattan Bank.
Yeah, on one of these videos, we got to get into. You told me a story about, John. You built a house, and John was sort of involved in that, and he would have conversations with the different construction guys, the dumpster guy. We need to get into that. Yeah. On one of these videos.
Yeah, definitely.
We've been on here, let's see, an hour and almost 20 minutes. You want to go? We'll go a few more minutes, get a few more questions. And
yeah, here's one. 813. Did John really abuse his guys the way Sammy portrays? Sammy claims he treated Jackie Nose, Tommy Gambino, Willie Boy and others like crap. First of all, he didn't treat his guys like crap. Let's get it straight, okay? Jackie Knows was the captain assigned to John. So yeah, if John was in a bad mood that day, Jackie Knows would get the shit. No doubt about it. He treated Tommy Gambino like the best he could treat anybody. He really, really was fond of Tommy Gambino. One time he got a little annoyed with Tommy Gambino, and we could get into that if you want. Willie Boy, that speaks for itself. But most of the time, unless there was something going on and John was twisted, he treated everybody pretty decent. There were times, like anybody else, where he was not in a good mood. And and he would take off on Jackie a lot and JoJo. But he only took off on Tommy Gambino one time, and there was a reason for that.
You want to hold that for another one, or you want to get into that, and then we'll call it a show? It's up to you.
Yeah, we could get into that. So we're going to talk about Tommy Gambino and why John got mad. So it's a Sunday, and I get a call from John. He says, "Do me a favor, go get your friend Tommy, or go get your friend Blinky." Everybody had a nickname for Tommy, Blinky. Tommy had a nervous twitch. So he says, "Go get your friend. I'm in Gino's Pizzeria in Long Beach." So I said, "Okay, see you in 30. Now, I knew Tommy was going out to dinner. I knew Tommy had a whole thing. So I go to Tom. Tommy has a house in Lido Beach, beautiful home. And I go there, I ring the bell, and his wife answers the door, Frances. Now, you got to remember, Frances was Three Fingers Brown's daughter of the Lucchese family. Imagine that wedding, Jesse.
Yeah.
Carlo and Lucchese. That was some wedding. So
yeah,
I ring the bell, and Frances answers the door. And, she turns white because they're all dressed, ready to go out. Tommy's ready to go. So I says, "Tom, you got to take a ride with me. We got to go meet John at Gino's Pizzeria." Now, I already knew. I had a thing in my head what was going on because Tommy and I had a conversation Friday. Somebody on the west side, which is the west side that's the Genovese side, went into one of Tommy's accounts in the garment center and consolidated trucking. So Tommy went to meet with somebody on the west side, but John had a policy. You can't meet with other members of other families without going to John, without going to the boss or the underboss first for permission. So when Tommy was telling me the story, I said, "Tom, far be it from me. This is your life, but don't you think you should post the boss?" That was an expression, post the boss. So Lewis said, "I'm going to be there 20 minutes. It's never," I said, "he finds out everything. I'm telling you, it's going to be a problem if he finds out. He's not going to find out." He says, it's in and out. Okay, do what you want. So when I go to the door and I see Tommy's a little undone, I says, "What's going on?" He says to me, "What's going on?" I says, "He's at Gino's Pizza in Long Beach. He just wants to see you for a few minutes." I said, "But I'm telling you, I know what it's about." I says, "It's when you went to meet those people on the west side." He says, "How would he find out?" I says, "Tom, he finds out everything." So we walk in there, and he didn't excuse me from the table. So he couldn't have been that mad, because if he was going to be mad, he would have excused me from the table to reprimand Tommy Gambino, because after all, Tommy is who he was, a captain, and also the son of Carlo Gambino.
Right.
So we sit down, and he says to Tom, "I thought we have a policy. There's a policy in this family. You're not supposed to meet with anybody from another family without posting me." So I says, "John, with respect," I says, "there was an account I was trying to get," and I lied to John. "There was an account I was trying to get in the garment center, and I didn't really want to bother you with it." So he just looked at me with that smile and that grin. He said, "Oh, is that what it was about?" I said, yeah. I says, I asked him to get me this account, and that's what he did. I says, and it was, like you always said, I don't want to bother you with all this, nonsensical, bullshit stuff. He says, Lewis, it's not bullshit. It's not bullshit. That's the policy that I have. I said, all right, well, then I apologize. I says, because I thought, because Tommy and I, we were together every day, 5-6 days a week. And, I figured, if anybody knows, it's Tommy. So he says, no problem. So he says to Tommy, looks at Tommy, says, Tommy, in the future, just so you know, I appreciate you getting us the account, but in the future, just let me know. So that was it. He says, I said, he said, I drive Tommy back to his house because I see he's all dressed and ready to go out, and come back here and we'll have some food. I said, all right. And John was alone. He drove himself to Long Beach. Normally he would have asked, at that point, he would have asked Carmine Agnello, or he would have asked me, or he would have asked Junior. But I guess he just wanted to be alone. So I dropped Tommy back off. So I got out of the car, I walk him to the door, he gives me a big hug. I said, listen, I don't know if you believe this or not, but, just so you know, you can't, I'm telling you, you should be telling me. So I go back to Gino's Pizza. I walk in. He says to me, that was a hell of a story you made up. You're protecting your friend? He said, what's the name of the account? So I confessed. I said, you're right. I didn't want you to rip him a new asshole. The guy is going out. The guy shakes every time you walk into the office, every time he comes to the garment. I says, just forget it. He did the wrong thing. The guy's 100% loyal for you. He'll do anything we ask him. Just forget it. So he says, all right. He says, it's forgotten. So, that was one thing. He wouldn't have done that for anybody else. Anybody else would have got their head severed.
Yeah.
Or would have had their house blown up. But that's a good Tommy Gambino, Lewis Kasman story that I just told you. And it's 100% true. Junior knows the story because when I saw Junior that Monday or Tuesday, he says, you had my father laughing. He says, but he said, he said, you stuck up for Tommy. He said, you're with the guy every day. I said, yeah. Well, I didn't want to see Tommy get opened up by Grandpa. There was no reason for it. So that's a good Tommy Gambino story. But you weren't tricking John. As soon as I got back, he says to me, that's a hell of a story. But listen, Tommy Gambino and I, it was that, he needed me for certain things, and I needed him for certain things, and we wound up having a pretty good repertoire. So,
right.
And that's really what John wanted, because he always used to tell me, Lewis, if I'm not here, you always have Tommy Gambino, and so that's that story.
And you said, in later on that John and Tommy actually became really close and would, cook out and stuff together. Is that right?
We had many barbecues at Tommy's house with John and other captains, which would be there. And Tommy was very, very helpful to John because Tommy was a very smart man, money-wise, and he was very smart when it came to the mafia. So, he was a big. Unfortunately, it didn't happen sooner, but he was a big asset to John, unbeknownst to a lot of other captains and unbeknownst to other people, because a lot of the other captains were very jealous of Tommy Gambino.
Yeah,
they were all jealous of each other. They hug and kiss. How are you? How's the kids? How's the family? And then behind your back, that fucking cocksucker, that motherfucker. That's all the way they all were. There was no difference to any of that. Here's one. You got to read this one, then we could go. I'm getting tired, Jesse.
All right, man.
Before you
get to that one, Lewis, let me just point out Mob Facts, American Made. What's up? He's got a great channel. He gets a lot of content, a lot of footage from a lot of mafia related stuff, a lot of crime related footage, and it's really good stuff. I wanted to just shout him out.
Yeah, maybe we do a show with him or something if he wants.
He gets a lot of old footage from the news, from things about organized crime and different things. Another one I wanted to put up here real quick. Joey Faraci, what about my innocent 16-year-old brother? Did you ever hear anything about this? Her brother was, I believe, he was taken out by Sammy Gravano. He was an innocent kid at the time, and I don't know if Sammy thought he was somebody else or what, but he was just an innocent kid, not involved in anything, and Sammy ends up taking him out.
Yeah, that's typical Sammy. That's a terrible tragedy for that family, and yeah, nothing more I could say about that.
Yeah.
Here's one.
What
Lewis,
was the one you wanted?
Here, 815. Homeless
Nice.
Maltese gay this. Do you believe Jerry Capisi when he said Gravano was correct? Read that, Jess.
Lewis, do you believe Jerry Capisi when he said Gravano was correct? F. Lee Bailey heard John say Gravano and Locascio were going to take the hit so John could be free.
Okay. Let me answer that question very distinctly. When I sent F. Lee Bailey to go visit John in the MCC, F. Lee Bailey was wearing high-heeled shoes because F. Lee Bailey was short. And he wasn't prepared. He had alcohol on his breath. And I'll never forget, I get that phone call. He says to me, "Why'd you send this guy in to see me?" Number one, he's got elevator shoes. John was funny. And he's drunk. He says, "I chased him out of here." That's when Shargell and Cutler were disqualified. So I made a list of the 5 most prominent criminal defense attorneys in the country. And Lee Bailey was on one of the lists. I didn't know Lee Bailey was a drunk. So that's what happened. And Lee Bailey never heard John say that. It never took place. John never told Gravano and Locascio to do that, nor do I believe he would. So, you got to take it from where it comes.
Gotcha. All right, Lewis, we've been on about an hour and 30 minutes. We've got well over 200, 222 right now in the chat. Went through a lot of good stories, a lot of good questions.
Okay.
I think we've done a good show, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I hope I was able to answer all your viewers' questions distinctly and honorably. This is what I saw. This is what my life was for the entire time. John Gotti Sr. was the boss of the Gambino organized crime family. I don't really care who believes what I say or doesn't. I know in my heart what the truth is. And people that know me and knew me back in those times knew what the relationship was and knew that, John had the utmost trust and faith in me. And yeah. So I just want to give a shout out to my brother, Peter. I hope you're doing okay. I wish I could be there with you to help you with the kids or whatever, but I'm sure Junior's there doing what he has to do. But Peter was always my favorite.
All right, man. Well, Lewis, again, I appreciate you doing this with me, and we'll try to do it again next weekend, hopefully.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
All right, Lewis.
Have a good night, Jesse. Good night.
All right, man. Good night. All right, guys. That's it. I appreciate all of you being here and watching. Like I said, whether you agree or disagree with Lewis Kasman, he was close to John, and he knows a lot of information and a lot of stories that's never been spoke about before. So, I enjoy speaking to him and asking him questions as well. But like I said, I appreciate everyone watching. Be sure to hit that like button. It helps the video. If you would, subscribe to the channel, and that way you don't miss another video. And donate to the channel if you can. It helps out. And everyone take care and have a good night. I appreciate it.